Oh, here we go. We're recording. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Insights and Innovations session today with our good friends from Quantcast. Today, we're going to hear from Nick O'Grady, who's the head of Client Services across APAC. He has a glorious beard, speaking about, and also the grooming of it. And he's going to be presenting and talking to us about personalisation. Which is obviously a very, very interesting conversation and one that's moving. Personalisation and real-time data and how to kind of do it well. So it's going to be a very, very interesting conversation in this ever-changing area. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the man, the legend, Nick. Nick, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sam. That's a lovely introduction. And thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for joining on the call. I do realize at the moment I'm going up against the Super Bowl halftime show, I think. So right now I'm just feeling a little bit more popular than Rihanna. So I really appreciate you guys joining. As Sam mentioned, I'm going to be talking a lot about personalization, particularly around the internet and online consumer behavior. Dive into some of the technology that's shaping the way that we think about the internet economy, that guide the businesses that we work for, and influencing the way we as consumers buy. I'm going to start off with a very non-controversial statement, sorry, team. My slides are frozen. They weren't 2 seconds ago. Oh, there we go. Apologies for that. I'm going to start off with a very non-controversial statement. The advancement of technology, internet speed, and compute power has profoundly changed the way we buy. Regardless of where we purchase services in the world or goods in the world, the touch points of that transaction have almost completely, if not totally completely, been digitized. And that's even for the simplest of purchases. I, for one, used to think it was a little bit of a novelty when I'd go into a pub and buy a pint of beer using a QR code and an app on my phone. Now that just seems to be the norm. And I realize that I'm running into a bit of a stereotype here, the guy with a huge beard talking about beer, but sometimes if the shoe fits, you wear it. But that consumer journey being more tech heavy than ever has done something to us. It's meant that we're sharing huge and more amounts of data. In Tim Harford's excellent book, he has a podcast called Cautionary Tales and a book called How to Make the World Add Up. And he describes it in this way. Each of us as individuals is sweating data. That data is being mopped out and wrung out into oceans of information. Always like that description because it's a real visceral sort of thing, and also makes you think about data in a bit of a disgusting way, like sweaty data. Ooh, who wants to touch that? It's no wonder we get algorithms to do the work for us. But given that, it's no wonder that there's been an absolute explosion in the last decades of companies that provide services and software to understand the consumer online and the customer experience. To paint a picture, just over a decade ago, there were about 150 MarTech solutions available globally. Today, that number has increased to over 10,000. That's a 6,500% increase in just 11 years. It's also just a lot of names to remember. Mercifully, I'm not going to show you the Lumascape today, but I'm sure you've seen a recent one with all the technology companies, and it looks like a magic eye puzzle. It's an aesthetic nightmare. You can't understand what each of these companies do just from looking at that thing. I turned 40 this year. I'm starting to forget my friends' kids' names, let alone the amount of MarTech companies that I have to keep in my head. But it's driven this behavior for us and the companies that we work for when we're assessing technology. We've become obsessed with how technology is working rather than what it does. It's a way that we think about technology that never really applies to our consumer technology that we enjoy today. For instance, go through your house and work out how many of the things that you operate that make your life easier. How does each thing work? We don't know. We just go, okay, I press this button and my smart lights work and my TV turns on and everything works perfectly and entertains me. But we're asking extremely intricate questions of the technology that we use today. Like, show me under the hood. What is the algorithm doing? And the nitty gritty. And maybe the better questions that we should start asking is, how does that technology make my day easier? How does it empower me to achieve my goals? How does it just work? But of course, it was inevitable that we're here. Technology has answered the question, hey, can we do this? Or what about this? Can we measure that? It's answered those questions so many times that we're now loaded up with information to categorize and assign value to and debate the importance of them. Entire companies have been built around solving the challenges that come with new ways to measure consumers online and ways to measure internet activity. And we get into debates over whether these new media metrics matter as much as some of the more established ones that help to answer important goals, like how many potential customers came to my site? Do people know and do they consider my brand? And if that wasn't enough to think about, we also are forced to react to decisions that are made completely outside of our industry, all the companies that we work with that influence the tech and challenge the way we think. I promise you, this is the only slide with cookies on it today. I know that we do talk about cookies ad nauseum, but there's a really good example. So browser controls, like the third-party cookie deprecation, it's a really good recent example of where a decision that's made outside of our influence affects the way that we think about the technology that we use. Really though, Chrome was just the last shoe to drop. Safari, which is the default browser on iOS, huge market share in Australia, and it already leaves 50% of the browser market without a way to successfully attribute media today, or even retarget. It's a huge addressable marketplace that are already there. Third-party cookies are dead, and you're already losing half that browsing audience if you're reliant on buckets of cookies. That same risk profile of deprecation is true of a lot of other deterministic identifiers that we use across multiple technologies today. Now, this is not a rally cry suggesting that deterministic online identifiers are somehow not valuable or going away, but banking on any one of these alone can lead to a situation where you might be challenged with scaling open web campaigns. You might be challenged by regulations, ID standards, or even practical things like people actually logging into websites that they use and being able to share that logged in identifier across multiple pages. All those sort of things challenge us. So in other words, if we limit addressable advertising to target and value only deterministic identifiers and ignore all of these other signals, we put ourselves at the mercy of technology and the structures out of our control. So changes to browser or app protocols, changes to regulation, and changes in human behavior. And the cost of traffic can also increase if we're actually unable to read many of those identifiers in the bid stream itself. If we take a holistic approach, for instance, testing addressable advertising in cookieless environments, as well as other contextual strategies, using technologies that allow for natural language processing, etc., it can work alongside your own data, so your CRM data, whether that's through a customer database, and it can also work alongside your anonymized web data, so people are coming to your sites that aren't logging in. If we take this approach, we work less at odds with technology, and we stop working around it, trying to find solutions, and we start to get empowered by it. I'll give you a really practical example of this and the benefits of not using any one identifier. So take, for instance, we're running a performance campaign through a DSP. In month one, we've got a set budget, and then we decide, you know what, this is performing really, really well. We're going to add an incremental budget and we're going to up our spend. In a performance environment, in a cookied environment, just using this, what you might find is your CPA might increase. And the reason for that is because your reach hasn't increased at all. You're still targeting the same buckets of cookies, but it's becoming more expensive and harder to get the lower funnel conversions. Take, for instance, a multi-signal approach where you're addressing a marketplace outside of just the cookied environment, say, for instance, using cookieless. If you double the budget, you can start to reach some of those harder to reach customers, although customers you weren't reaching before. Simplify the CPA, or sorry, I should say, flatten the curve of the CPA, keep that stable, and increase your reach at the same time. Let's talk a little bit more about people and a little bit more about personalisation, as that's the topic of the day. People and circumstances, they don't exist in some fixed state when it comes to making a buying decision. People's attitudes are based on a multitude of psychological elements. And what we're finding is people grow, people change, and they're eternally impulsive. Things like their relationships, how they feel in social environments, that constant fluctuating experience they have while engaging with technology and media influence our decision making. They callously move in and out of marketing segments and pick up new interests with no regard to what that does to our segmentation. I always think about segments and the way we look at static buckets of people and think about when people move in and out of them. And I get Helen Lovejoy's voice from The Simpsons coming in my head going, why won't they think of the personas? People also have changing attitudes towards privacy. They boldly choose with whom they share their email address with and phone number, and we're going to get more into the data behind that. And there are people out there, in fact, as much as 90% of the open internet, who don't even have the common decency to log into a website when they visit it. So reading and understanding internet behaviour, both anonymous and declared, as it happens, it's important to power models of understanding, predictions about consumers, and make us more adaptive to change. Because things change all the time. Here are some examples in the real world where consumer attitudes change to a brand super quickly and have profound effects on the business. Peloton sales absolutely exploded during the pandemic, but then dipped in 2022 in Q1. And that wasn't just because you could go out and ride a proper bike outside. It was also with stuff things that you couldn't forecast. A motor PR factor is when television characters started dying on Peloton bikes, the sales dipped in line with that. It's not always rational. With Nicorette, as health concerns around education became more widespread in the media in the 2000s, smoking cessation products naturally increased in popularity. And of course, the same is true on the risk of UV radiation and the sales of SPF 50 and sunscreen and everything like that. It speaks to me as a ginger kid. It was always really important for me. My mum slapped that stuff on me. She was probably, caused the banana boat IPO in the first place. But anyway, just giving you examples of people's attitude changing both fast and slow and how we react to that. Because the volume of media that we consume as individuals is different. But the increased speed at which the information travels to us is undeniable. Media we consume can shape attitudes. It can persuade people to buy or not to buy. It can influence our interactions with the world politically and commercially, and in real ways change behavior. We don't live in that media monoculture anymore where we have 4 television shows and everyone reads the same newspaper. People are seeking and receiving information at different frequencies from different sources. So there's power in understanding consumers in real time, because guess what? We're impulsive and we like things to be tailored to us. So let's throw some stats out there. Studies have shown that 87% of all shoppers make impulse buys, that is online and in the real world. But 2/3 of buyers will be deterred from seeing non-personalized material. So there's an expectation there on tailoring. Companies that use advanced personalization do see really strong return on investment. And the biggest challenge, well, one of the biggest challenges that came out of a segment survey was that 43% of companies perceive accurate real-time customer data as the most difficult hurdle to their personalization efforts. So let's talk about the paradox of all of this. Because we love personalization, we've answered many consumer surveys, for instance, the McKinsey report that comes out, well, this one is from 2021. People get frustrated if they don't get personalized information. They expect personalization. And if you've ever been on the internet when Spotify Wrapped comes out, you'll know that people love sharing their data, especially when it makes us look cool. But the other side of it is, and I'll reference an Australian Consumer Attitudes to Privacy survey in Australia, that most Australians actually think that protecting personal information is a major concern. Half of Australians are uncomfortable with profiles created about them based on their data. Now, this does skew to an older demographic. Younger generations are a little bit more savvy about how their data is being used on the internet. And thankfully for our industry, a majority of Australians also answered positively to the question about ad relevance, i.e., if I have to receive ads, I prefer them to be relevant to me. So the future is not necessarily about a privacy safe identifier, but making identity privacy safe. Targeting solutions should look to provide relevant, personalized advertising without compromising on that privacy. Targeting solutions can provide personalization without needing a name, without needing a number, and without needing an email address. Personalized advertising doesn't need to rely on segments, but can use the power of prediction. So I want to tell a famous story. No doubt a lot of you will have heard this one before. It was a 2012 case study that was published in the New York Times about the retail store Target. The report was super boastful. The Target had so much data on its customers, was so skilled at analyzing that data, that its insights often seemed like magic. The anecdote that was used was illustrative of a man that walked into the department store. So he walked into a Target store and he complained to the manager. He was furious. He wanted to know why coupons were being sent to his daughter for discounts on baby clothes and maternity wear. The manager apologizes profusely. I mean, the poor kid was probably 20 or so. He felt so bad and he called the dad back later to apologize again. Of course, what did he find out? That his daughter was actually pregnant and the father didn't know. This story I've heard used in articles about how machine learning gone too far? Does the AI know too much about us? And basically a story about why big tech and big data are creepy and be wary of AI. The thing about this story is how mundane of a thing it actually is that's happening here. The mundanity of the algorithm. Target's computer model analyzed the daughter's purchase of unscented wipes and magnesium supplements, which led the models to make a prediction, i.e. that the purchaser of those goods was more likely than less likely to either be in the early stages of pregnancy or trying to get pregnant. The problem with this story is we only hear about the time that Target got it right. So there's a false positive issue here, and hear nothing from women who may receive similar targeted coupons. But if the prediction itself increased Target sales by 10 to 15%, it was almost certainly worth it. It tells an important story about prediction, but it also tells an important story about feedback. Now, the internet has plenty of angry dads. No doubt you've all read a comment section every now and then. But we don't have an angry dad to rely on to tell us if our activity works or not. The structure of the internet gives us a huge advantage when it comes to a feedback loop for predictive models. Having data that updates in real time can supercharge those predictions in both anonymous and known environments. Using that example, we're in that stage of iterative AI where machine learning automates campaign execution. So if you've got running an advertising campaign, you find out in real time whether your media is working or not. What does that tell us? That real-time data is no longer a nice to have. For a high definition 4K view of our world in data that shows shifts both large and small, feedback in real time is important to understand the effectiveness of our predictions. We can use real-time data to understand and make up the interest of visitors to your website, to message potential buyers in that highly stimulated environment of the internet. And it's important for brands to offer personalized experience, as we know from studies. And where we get bogged down sometimes in these marketing segments, preferring those over a predicted audience, is that sometimes we're looking back so often, we're not looking forward. Real-time signal shows you what's happening and can predict what is going to happen, whereas segments are backwards looking. So people aren't automatically going to be in a mindset to purchase products that are advertised. We all know that. We all seen advertising on TV before, and we're not in market. But we're going to arrive there at some point. People arrive there at some point. And when they do, you just need to be there when their minds change. That is to say, people aren't fixed into buckets. They evolved. The day of loosely classified data segments are not meeting the real-time needs of the marketer. The open internet is weird and wonderful and full of new entrants and new ideas. We already know that people have a high level of impulsivity. Is 87% of people make those decisions, and I think we can probably see that in our own lives. What we know is the driver of that is that if people have the key resource of time and money, they will be browsing the internet when something is likely to change. Marketers will be able to pick up signals of people intensely researching your product. So we all understand that when people are researching something, picking up keywords, and we can deliver real-time advertising to those people. But what about the people who've just been inspired by a sentence that they've read? Someone who's just picked up an article at random. Real-time data can meet the need when sudden inspiration hits and not an intense discovery process. So the solutions. It's really hard to capture live intent with stale data. Models training on live internet signals, capturing both probabilistic and deterministic IDs, can power predictions to deliver timely and highly relevant advertising. I mean, we've learned so much about training data in the last couple of months, like when we hear about ChatGPT and working out what the model is being trained on, and looking at that with good, solid, quick data, the predictions are better. It shouldn't just be about humans enabling technology, but technology enabling humans. In our consumer technology, it makes our life easier. It's only fair that we should expect our business technology to do the same. So when we think about the repeatable nature, the repeatable tasks of operating some of the advertising technology today, we need to look for solutions that actually allow our hands to be off the keyboards and start thinking about strategy. And a pet pain point of mine is going through loads of Excel sheets trying to find an insight, manipulate data to make an insight make sense. If we use audience analytics and advanced systems to visualize data easier, we get the feedback and the understanding of what our media is doing in real time and understanding into insights in our activity, and we're not spending 5 days in Excel. So in terms of real-time data, this is the only sort of Quantcast slide I have for you. But the way Quantcast works is we look at real-time data that comes in through both anonymized and declared traffic to your web properties. We look at our campaign execution to be built on top of that data to make predictions about what audiences do. We use an AI to look at optimal bidding and record those live results in real time. So when we talk about that constant iterative cycle, that's what we're talking about at Quantcast. When we go, here's a test, we think that we make a prediction that this person is going to convert, or this person is likely to be in this category. And then we see if that data point comes back and says, yep, you did it. Not that angry dad, but someone else goes, yep, that worked. And we see those results in real time and can iterate, pass out the stuff that's not working, and optimize the stuff that is. So in summary, people are emotional, they're impulsive, they're diverse, and what they buy is based on many situational and psychological factors. Live data is crucial to power autonomous marketing activity and insights, and personalised based on prediction. Live data helps us make decisions about messages of influence, and also to create and importantly update online environments. And look, technology is not always going to change the world, but it will be there when the world's minds change. So that is the thoughts I hope to leave you with today. I have got some time for questions, but for a little bit about me, there are my details. If you want to add me on LinkedIn or get in touch about anything in today's presentation, or want to hear more about Quantcast.
Guys, are there any questions for Nick? And Nick, there are rarely questions because no one likes to speak in this, but you can put them in the chat feature if you want to.
It's funny. Last time I spoke through this, Sam, it was in a room full of people, so it was very hard to judge if anyone had their hand up or anything. But
no, all good. Look, thank you very much, Nick, for that. Really interesting and always an interesting subject. Thank you, Quantcast, for your support of the IAA also. Just a little reminder for everyone, Cleanup Australia the 28th, so if your agency is involved, we'll be in contact about that today. The Academy is now open for people who are interested in it. International Women's Day, we've got 40 tickets left. and that's on the 8th of March. And then on the 16th of March, we're coming to Brisbane for an event. So watch your calendars for those. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Insights and Innovation series. Thank you, Quantcast. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Nick. And talk to everyone soon. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.